Zero, zilch, nada, vapor. This. That's it. Have an absolutely fantastic day.
Have a wonderful
today.
Wednesday.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
Give us that tune. Come on. Old cinnamon.
Please hide me around the rock. Please hide me, Lord, all on my day. But the rock right out. I can't hide you, the rock right out. I can't hide you, the rock right out. I ain't gonna hide you down all on that day.
So when I wake up in the morning, I say a word of prayer. Tap, 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 tap. Yo, this is yours truly, The Image, and I'm representing for CVM. See it happen. You hear that? CVM what? See it happen. Listen, keep it locked.
And welcome. Tonight on Lead Story, a program about systems under pressure. From Washington to Kingston, decisions made by those in power are having real and immediate consequences for Jamaicans and the wider Caribbean. The United States has announced an indefinite freeze on immigrant visa processing for 75 countries, including Jamaica and multiple CARICOM states. This is a move that directly affects family reunification, labor mobility, and access to opportunities at home. Then, a damning audit into procurement at the University of the West Indies has raised serious questions about governance, oversight, and the use of public funds. And later, a call from civil society for promises made on accountability and constitutional reform to finally be delivered. This is Lead Story. The U.S. State Department has announced an indefinite pause on immigrant visa processing for 75 countries. Effective January 21, the decision is part of a broader review of how the United States applies what they call the so-called public charge rule, which allows consular officers to deny visas to applicants deemed likely to require public financial assistance. On screen there you see the media release from the U.S. Department of State shared by the U.S. Embassy here in Jamaica, with them indicating that an indefinite pause for 75 countries, including Jamaica, now comes into effect on January 21. Now, they have said that those immigrant visa appointments will continue as scheduled. However, the announcement, though, is only for immigrant visas. Non-immigrant visas, or those tourist visas that you're accustomed to, are not affected by the pause announced today. However, the list of countries that are impacted is long. The United States has indicated that Jamaica, along with several Caribbean states, including countries in Africa, Latin America, the Middle East, and Europe, as well as particular countries, Russia, Iran, Somalia, Afghanistan, Brazil, Nigeria, and Thailand, are affected. Here in the CARICOM and the Caribbean, Antigua and Barbuda, the Bahamas, Barbados, Belize, Cuba, Dominica, Grenada, Haiti, of course, Jamaica on that list, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Now, yesterday we talked about this, the implications for those countries, talking about the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Terence Drew, talking about his cooperation with the United States, saying that they were willing to take in non-nationals into St. Kitts and Nevis in order to assist the country, the United States, with their third country relocation program, indicating that he was only taking in CARICOM member state countries and was excluding specifically Haiti, a member of CARICOM. On that list, St. Lucia, with their Prime Minister, Philip J. Pierre, indicating that this situation that had been put now to them is one that they were working with the United States to accept third-party nationals. But you still see them on this list. St. Lucia is still there, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Antigua and Barbuda and Dominica not only have worked with the United States to accept third-party nationals, volunteering and supporting the U.S. programs, but they have also been hit by a bond that the United States has indicated is now up to $15,000 US for the non-immigrant category of visas, making it even more difficult for Antiguans and Barbudans, along with Dominicans, to get to the United States. So even if they are cooperative countries, they're still having a very rough go at it. But the implications are far-reaching for families waiting to reunite, for students and workers, and for small states whose citizens rely on predictable, rule-based mobility. Joining us now is Jamaican-born immigration attorney in the United States, Winston Tucker. Hi, Winston Tucker, and thanks so much for joining us inside Lead Story.
Good evening.
Winston Tucker, this is a rough time for so many Jamaicans and Caribbean nationals as we watch ourselves be added to the list of 75 countries that the United States has now said are going to have an indefinite pause on immigrant visas. So let's start off first. What are immigrant visas? What are we talking about when the U.S. State Department issues an informational warning like this?
Okay, immigrant visas are those who are given legal permanent residency to live in the United States permanently. Non-immigrant visas are visas issued for particular purposes, and as it relates to non-immigrant visas, it is always useful for those who are entering on non-immigrant visas to use the visa for the purpose that they got the visa for.
Winston Tucker, this discussion, though, about immigrant visas, those who are moving to the United States, versus non-immigrant visas, those who are tourists or going for business purposes but coming back, is a more difficult distinction for countries like Jamaica, where we have the concept of running off. This idea that someone with a non-immigrant visa goes to the United States and then never comes back. Is that something that has been indicated to be a particular issue for countries like Jamaica?
Well, yes, in the past, and this is why they have come up with the bond. And there is now going to be a bond that they're going to be introducing sometime soon for those who would normally be challenged in getting a non-immigrant visa. They'll be able to post a bond that will give the U.S. government some kind of assurance that they will return. And there's also that visa integrity fee that you get back at the end of that period for which you would have gotten a non-immigrant visa, providing you don't violate it.
There has been a lot of discussion, Winston Tucker, though, about these two policies. This bond that has to be put up to $15,000 based on the decision made by the U.S. consular officer at the time that you go to apply for the visa. No return of that money. So $15,000 US is a lot of money. This is over $1 million that people would have to come up with in countries like Antigua and Barbuda and Dominica. But we're also looking at a system where even the visa integrity fee, that fee that you pay, and at the end of your visa you're to get back. There seems to be no process that has been delineated as to how the money is returned to you, when it's returned to you, and if it even will be returned to you, especially if this is in a new administration. Do you have any more details on that?
Absolutely not, except to say that we are indeed in a time of flux, and being in a time of flux with no set direction, and from an administration that prides itself on being disruptive without definite direction, then even as council, what we find is that we have to be thinking on our feet and move as the policy changes with the whim of any one of the cabinet members.
Let's find out then what this new announcement by the United States State Department means. They have said it's going to be indefinite suspension of immigrant visa processing. What does that mean in legal and practical terms, and what should Jamaican and Caribbean applicants realistically expect?
Well, what I understand is that they are pausing it so that they can reassess. I would think that a reasonable time would be allowed for them to reassess. And if a reasonable time passes and the visa's application and processing does not come back on stream, then I'm sure you will get some challenges at the administration, some legal challenges. But for now, we will have to wait and see where it goes, because the ball is in the administration's court.
All right, but practically speaking, where are we? Is this a de facto ban that we're looking at, saying that you don't want people from these 75 countries coming into the United States, including Jamaica and other Caribbean countries? Or are we looking at maybe a backlog that they're cleaning up? Or is that policy position that they've taken one that says they're making sure that people who are not a charge on the public purse are the only ones that come in?
It's a mix of policy from my estimation. It's a mix of policy and favoritism. Now, I say favoritism because I don't see Trinidad on the list. I don't see Guyana on the list.
And Suriname as well, another oil-producing country next to Guyana. Those are the only three CARICOM countries not on the list. Guyana being very cooperative with the United States, Trinidad and Tobago being incredibly close to the US, and Suriname being cooperative as well. So is that favoritism that you're calling a matter of them being oil-producing countries, or something else?
It is indeed, yes, favoritism from the standpoint that, yes, they have significant business relationship relating to oil, and at the same time Trinidad was very cooperative in their activities relating to Venezuela.
That is the kind of cooperation, though, that persons have been looking at and raising concerns about what it is that Trinidad and Tobago could be doing, but how much more cooperative Caribbean countries could be. Dominica and Antigua and Barbuda were very cooperative with the U.S., taking in third country nationals, but they also got the bond, and now they're on this list. How much more cooperative do you think the U.S. wants Caribbean countries to be?
And this is what I mean when I say when they operate on their own whim and fancy. There is a philosophy of disruption, and with their disruption, then they will come up with any reason that they have no need to explain until it is challenged illegally.
Winston Tucker, we're going to take a break with you inside Lead Story and come back because there is so much more that Jamaicans and other CARICOM nationals need to hear from you and attorneys like you as we figure out now where we are with reunifying with our families, and now the U.S. decision to put this pause on immigrant visas. What could it mean for non-immigrant visas as well? We'll talk about that next here on Lead Story.
every day starts with care. Care that's always close. Supermed family of pharmacies is where you go for everything you need. From your morning routine to life's biggest moments. Supermed family of pharmacies is always by your side. Whether it's prescriptions or household essentials, trust the care that's close to home. Super happy, super healthy, Supermed.
Let's delve deep into the issues. We'll take you beneath the surface.
Greetings and salutations. My name is Orville Higgins and it's another edition of Fan Central.
Talking to the people at the heart of the top sporting stories. Hear from your favorite sportsmen and women and the administrators who work tirelessly to make it all happen. It's a live sports talk.
I've written an entire article.
Yes.
Looking at all the major issues every Tuesday at 9 p.m. It's Fan Central.
Jamaica's unemployment rate has fallen to 3.3%, down from 13.2% in 2016. Our government's continued focus on job creation is delivering real results. We are building Jamaica. The time by the Office of the Prime Minister is...
Thanks so much for staying with us inside Lead Story. Joining us now is Jamaican-born immigration attorney in the United States, Winston Tucker. And he's talking to us today about the explosive new development coming from the United States, that 75 countries, including Jamaica, are now on a list that the United States says is going to have us receive a pause on the processing of on immigrant visas, those who are working to live in the United States. If you're just a tourist or you're going for business purposes, that's a non-immigrant visa, a different category entirely. And Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Kamina Johnson-Smith, earlier today posted on social media platform X talking about that, making the distinction between immigrant and non-immigrant visas. But she also said that she received information from the U.S. Embassy here in Jamaica and clarified that it would not affect certain categories of workers, not affecting applications for regular tourist visas, student visas, business visas, or visas part of seasonal work programs like those for farm work and hospitality programs, which she says continue to be processed by the U.S. Embassy in Kingston. Winston Tucker, are you surprised by that?
Not necessarily, because this administration continued to come up with policies out of the blue, without warning. So we have to, and realistically, have learned to adapt and pivot. So we are able to serve a clientele that is in need of interaction with their families, especially in the United States, through family reunification.
This is something that the Trump administration says is happening because these countries, all 75 of them, are countries from which nationals become a charge on the public purse of the United States. Explain what a public purse charge is and why it's important now that these 75 countries have been put on this list.
I don't find that to be the case, because as it is, you have to show that you will not become a public charge if you are being sponsored to enter the United States on an immigrant visa. and the law prevent you from accessing public benefits for 5 years. And at the same time, if you do, then what will happen is that your sponsor on the affidavit of support, that is in essence assuring the United States government that you will not become a public charge, they in turn can answer to the government, or the government can go after them for them to return whatever you were able to access. So it is more than just finances. It's about politics. And we have to recognize that there has been an effort in these United States for the longest time to limit the inflow of potential Democratic voters, meaning that after 5 years or after 3 years being married to a citizen, and after 5 years of legal permanent residency, providing you satisfy all the other requirements as it relates to criminal activities, then you will qualify and will be sworn in as a citizen, and that allow you to be able to vote. And what they have found is over the years, the Republican Party have found that 80% of those new citizens always register as Democrats. So therefore, if you kill the flow, you don't have to worry about them in the future. So this is part of limiting legal immigration.
This is also something that has been extended by the U.S. State Department in a memo seen by U.S. media house Fox News. They have said that under the guidance, consular officers are directed to weigh a wide range of factors when assessing applicants, including age, health, financial resources, English proficiency, employment prospects, and potential need for long-term medical care. Those might sound quite reasonable for someone who says, given the broader picture you've painted about these potentially becoming Democratic voters, these are also reasonable grounds for the United States to say, this is the kind of person that might drain U.S. taxpayers' money. What do you say about these categories that have now been given to the consular officers as guidance?
It has not happened to date. So unless they can come up with the statistics that they use as the foundation to come with these policies, I am going to respectfully disagree.
And that is really a big question that has been raised, because 75 countries on that list is 38% of the globe's population, or rather the globe's countries. This is a really, really wide list. You're saying that you've seen nothing that shows that all of these countries are, in fact, more likely than not to be charged on the public purse?
I have not seen it. And if I look to the community that I'm indeed more familiar with, the Caribbean community and Jamaicans in particular, that is not the case.
Well, if that is not the case, then talk to me about who might be impacted, because we heard from Minister Kimina Johnson-Smith through her social media post that those who are farm workers won't be affected, visa applicants won't be affected, others, rather student visa applicants won't be affected, and others. But only 2 days ago...
I hear your question now. If you're asking who will be affected, that's different. I was addressing the fairness of the policy.
No. I'm asking you now a new thing, because 2 days ago, the State Department said that they were happy to have now rejected or canceled 100,000 visas, including in the categories of student visa holders and others. Is it then a matter of time for us to see this expansion with him, the picture there of the State Department saying 100,000 visas revoked, including some 8,000 student visas and 2,500 specialized visas for individuals who had encountered with U.S. law enforcement for criminal activity? Are we then expecting to see this be an announcement today, another announcement in a few days, because this only comes into effect 7 days from now on January 21?
Well, I will not be surprised if going into the future we get continual announcements that in essence will address those who are entering the United States that this administration do not have a favorable view towards. I can go back to a time when this administration took the position that some countries are SO countries and that they would prefer to get people coming into the United States from places like Sweden.
And this is a comment that had been made by President Trump during his first presidency, indicating that some countries were entirely undesirable. We heard Winston Tucker there being very diplomatic in not reading it out and saying the entire phrase that had been said by former President Trump at the time, former President Trump during his first term in office, and instead saying he preferred Swedish immigrants. Was this also a racially based conversation, one that said white and white appearing immigrants were more desirable to the United States than brown and black people?
Well, this is what I will say. In recent times, you have seen this administration decided to be favorable to some farmers in South Africa, claiming that as white farmers, they were discriminated against and under attack constantly. And so a visa process was made available for them. I have not worked with any one of them, so I don't know how successful it has been to date. But this administration carved out a particular area for white South African farmers. So therefore, if you're going to ask if there's a tinge of racism, then by definition, you have to say yes.
A rough end for many people then as they're watching some of their dreams go up in smoke. Winston Tucker, what should Caribbean and Jamaican, especially applicants, be doing right now? Should they wait, withdraw, refile, seek alternatives? What do they do when the United States has made it very, very clear that through this policy, they might not welcome you into the country, even if you meet all their requirements?
Well, I'll say this. And it is in one of our Master Blasters' lyrics. They cannot stop the time. Only God can stop the time. Courtesy of Bob Marley.
Well, what does that mean, Winston Tucker, for somebody who's looking and saying, but my family is up there, but my children are up there, but I want my children to come with me? What do they do right now? This is terrifying news. And for other people, they're looking and saying this immigrant visas today, but they might face increased scrutiny as non-immigrant visas from any of these countries going into the U.S. as well.
Yes, you have to be patient and at the same time encourage your relatives to interact with their congressional representatives, because it is through their congressional representatives who they will be able to get information back to the administration as to how devastating the policy is, if it ever becomes devastating.
I think that is so sobering for many people. Part of what we've been watching as well is that Somalis in the United States have now had an end to their temporary protected status, with President Donald Trump saying they need to leave by mid-March. This is something that others fear might happen to other immigrant communities, including Jamaica. How real a fear is that?
It is unfortunate because, again, it's an example as to how this administration, how they operate. And it is not only this administration, it has happened in prior administration and in prior times. Because do not forget that there was Japanese internment at a point in time in these United States where you're a Japanese or of Japanese extract, then they had a camp where you were interned. So therefore, these things happen all the time. And we have seen where, for example, the Biden administration went extremely generous in the past 4 years. So extreme that on a realistic basis, you knew that it was not sustainable. And one of the things that we learn in physics is if you swing a pendulum one direction at a particular with a particular force, it is going to come back with a similar force. So Trump coming back with this kind of force is what could have been expected.
And so then, with everything having an equal and opposite reaction, we're watching then the decision by the United States State Department to limit 75 countries from now having processing of immigrant visas and seeing what comes next. Certainly, we benefited from the insights of immigration attorney in the United States, Winston Tucker. Thank you so very much for helping calm the nerves and fears of some, terrify others as they understand what is going on, but certainly inform us all here inside Lead Story. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
We're going to take a break and come back to you because this is only 5 months before the FIFA World Cup. What is going on if we're watching this for non-immigrant visa holders? If you're wanting to go there to go visit, is this terrifying? Because if you want to go there to live, that's different. But teams are packing up and getting ready to go to the World Cup. What does planning like this now look like for one of the host countries in the next few months? We'll talk about that here inside Lead Story.
Maker. Make we do the right thing. Make we live good today for a better tomorrow. Talk it out. Don't fight it out. The time by the Ministry of National Security is
6:30.
Every dream conquered is another dream gained. I land and I fly again like a jet plane. Headed straight in your direction. 'Cause I'm wiser, one step closer. I'm winning 'cause I work so hard. And the music hits I play, and the people them I say we are my show tonight. Oh, what a feeling! Don't stop dreaming. Keep on believing in the power of the feeling. Whatever you want, take a chance. Song in your heart, step in your dance. You got a spark, don't put it down. Shine your lights on.
Get tiles and get creative with your floors, walls, and all the spaces in between. Our knowledgeable sales consultants are happy to help create your beautiful finish with the latest designs in first quality porcelain, wood look, vinyl, mosaics, natural stones, and countertops. At Creative, you will get every tile you need for your residential or commercial projects. Creative Building Finishes, your one-stop shop for everything tiles. Visit our showroom at 5 Red Hills Road or call 876-929-5553. Get tiles, get creative.
Thanks so much for staying with us inside Lead Story. The story unfolds in many different ways because with the United States indicating now that 75 countries, including Jamaica, are now on a list that will have the pausing of immigrant visas into the United States, it's now raised concerns about all the excitement going on for the FIFA World Cup. Canada, Mexico, and the United States will be hosting the World Cup start in June. And on June 11, you'll be seeing the first game take place in Mexico. But with the United States not getting along with Canada and Mexico, and with us now watching the United States making it look even more difficult to go to the country, what does it mean for the world's biggest event? We have with us head of sports here inside CVMTV, Jordan Fort, on set with me to talk to us about what's going on with this. Hi, Jordan.
Hi, Jody.
Jordan, you hear the big news today. You see the reactions, not only the ticket prices that created a big debacle for FIFA now going into the World Cup, but now this again, and the bombing in the Southern Caribbean, plus the United States not getting along with Mexico and Canada. What does this mean for FIFA World Cup? Men's World Cup.
Yeah, the thing about it is that, of course, it's still early days yet, and I'm sure you'd have explained the difference now between non-immigrant and immigrant visas. And
tourist visas are non-immigrant visas, so if you want to go watch the game, that's a regular visa category. The U.S. Embassy here in Jamaica indicating that's fine. Immigrant visas, those who want to move to the United States, are now the category of visas that are impacted.
Right.
Yes.
And so at least now that clarification has come, there is now, I guess, a kind of a sigh of relief to some extent as it relates to Jamaica, for example, and Jamaica's own pursuits in the United States from a sporting perspective. Now, we know that Jamaicans, generally speaking, depend heavily on the United States in their sporting endeavors. And we know that a number of Jamaican athletes, whether it be in athletics, whether it be in football, whichever sport it is, a number of them go to the United States yearly on collegiate scholarships. And so that was one aspect that we had, begun to question when the news just came out. Now that it's talking about immigrant visas, at least that has eased that fear, somewhat temporarily.
And Kamina Johnson-Smith, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, has said in her tweet on social media platform X that we will not be seeing an impact on student visas or work visas for those on farm work programs. But
so
we're
good.
also watching the U.S. Through President Trump 2 days ago say 100,000 visas of students, including students, had now been revoked. Does that then raise a concern that today it looks good, tomorrow it might all fall apart?
Precisely. And so that's why I said early days yet. That's why I started by saying that. And I spoke with the JOA president, Jamaica Olympic Association President Christopher Samuda earlier, and he raised the same point because he said, listen, despite the fact that there's no timeline, there's no defined timeline as to how long this pause will be, plus, it's talking about immigrant visas, it is a matter for diplomacy now for apex sporting bodies to get in on the conversation quickly enough so that this does not spiral out of control, and then we will see work permits, for example, affected, because that now will go into the heart of how a number of people, Jamaicans of course, especially because we're talking about Jamaica, but globally, who depend so heavily on their scholarships to the United States to advance not only their sporting pursuit, but their life in general, Jody. You spoke about the FIFA World Cup, of course, and that is coming up this summer. And the questions are still very fresh in our minds as to what happens to even a number of countries that has sanctions imposed on them. For example, Iran, who has qualified for the World Cup. FIFA has sought to clear the air, saying that Iran, will have no issues in terms of the national team traveling to the United States, getting their requisite documents to compete.
But they're not likely to have supporters. They're not having...
will be affected. Of course, we're talking about Jamaica's possible qualification for the World Cup. We don't want to jump steps because, of course, Jamaica has to win 2 more games
against
to qualify.
very hard teams. We've chosen the harder path.
New Caledonia and Democratic Republic of Congo at the end of March to qualify for the World Cup. And again, if there is a lengthening of this process and it spills over into tourist visas, then how will Jamaican fans possibly be, again, with skipping steps, affected?
Let's listen to Chris Samuda, because you said you spoke to him as president of the Jamaica Olympic Association, and he definitely needs to be somebody who we hear on this, because this is terrifying. You're having now this major sporting event. You have other Olympic events that you said you need U.S. support for. What is it that we're going to be doing? Let's take a listen to this.
This calls for sport diplomacy and multilateral roundtable discussions or negotiations before what appears to be a temporary situation morphs into a permanent policy or regulation. Before positions become intractable, the ice has to be broken, and quickly too. The LA Games in 2028 is not far off. And so I'm sure the IOC Executive Board is keeping a watchful eye on matters so as to proactively safeguard not only the LA Games itself, but also qualifying competitions and tournaments for the games in the various sports. And Jordan, critically, protection has to be given to the livelihood of athletes, as the USA is not only a competition destination for them, but also a training, family, and medical destination. The situation calls for treatment by apex global bodies in sport and governments of affected countries to make joined up and appropriate submissions and approaches to the US government to achieve consensus and mutuality
That was Christopher Smoot, president of the Jamaica Olympic Association, talking to us not about the Men's World Cup that's coming up in June, but another major sporting event that's happening there as well, the Olympics to be held in Los Angeles, California in the U.S. And so these questions about whether people can move around, what it means for our athletes and those who are hoping to attend these sporting events are live. We're taking you through all the discussions coming out of what has unfolded today, coming from the U.S. State Department's announcement that 75 countries, including Jamaica, are now on a list that will have immigrant visas now be paused as they look to assess their process in the United States. It's an indefinite pause, and we don't even know the beginnings of when we could see that process begin again. As we move now from processes in the United States, we're looking at processes in Jamaica, because the question of accountability is one that we are deep diving into with the executive director of the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, Jeanette Calder. Now, she's joining us because she has raised some concerns, issues, and questions about what it is that we have heard. Her organization is calling for the full implementation of an accountability framework promised by the government in 2023 and for constitutional accountability reforms first promised as far back as 2015. Now, Jeanette, you said that Jamaicans aren't asking for anything new. We're just asking for the things that had been promised to be kept. Correct. What was promised?
Well, I want to just start off by saying when you have a prime ministerial candidate, you usually come out to the platform telling your potential voters the best thing that you can provide to convince them that you're the man for the job. And I agree with then candidate, but now Prime Minister Holness, that when he zoomed in and narrowed in on accountability, I thoroughly endorse that as perhaps the master key to success for Jamaica. It's not just a matter of accountability for a nation, but if you think about it, Jodi, would you be where you are today without accountability?
I would not.
Isn't there maybe a grandmother, a pastor, a teacher, a friend, all the way along, and then your own personal accountability that says, look, these are my goals, I have to be disciplined, I have to be consistent, and there were people to sanction you along the way. And it might have felt like punishment, but talk the truth, wasn't it the medicine that you needed to get your dreams achieved and accomplished? Would you say that?
I think so.
I think it's a fair statement for anybody who succeeds. So whether it's at the personal level or the corporate level, but certainly at the national level, if you don't have accountability, we're not going to achieve that, which is our potential. So I'm just endorsing what the Prime Minister said in 2015 in making this his plank. Now, what were the three specific things constitutionally that he promised? Well, folks are going to say, here comes Jeanette and impeachment. But impeachment was one, and whereas I am not stuck on the idea that the mechanism has to be impeachment, I am agreeing with the Prime Minister that we pay 63 public officials, we vote them in, but that's how we hire them. We have about 110,000 other public officials that we hire and pay their salaries. And government is perhaps the only place, Jodi, where if you're not happy, you can't do nothing about it. So Mr. Holness came in and said, no, that's wrong in principle. So he was going to give us a mechanism by which, if we had parliamentarians in particular, who were not performing, whether in the constituency, like people who will get, vote and I'll see you again kind of thing, or in the House, that we would be put in a position if we were dissatisfied to be able to remove them.
Some of the other things that you've spoken about, including where the Prime Minister committed in 2023 to a code of ethics of parliamentarians. That was a big discussion point. Financial penalties for unexcused absences and mandatory written accountability reports, public targets for cabinet ministers. Jamaicans heard these things and said, that's so nicey.
It did.
Is Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal coming to Jamaicans and saying, we too thought it sounded nice. We're now coming back and saying, we're following up to ask, where's the nice thing now?
Absolutely, and I want to encourage your listeners, Jodi, because one of the first things the Prime Minister, and I think it's very important that we remind the listeners the context of why these promises were made. Remember, this was on the heel of significant increases in salaries, and there was an outcry. And the Prime Minister came and said, listen guys, I've taken care of the compensation. Right behind it, my plan is that we would have this accountability framework. So let us not forget that we are paying billions of dollars and waiting though to see how we're going to make sure we get value from the billions, which is the accountability framework. So the first thing the Prime Minister promised, and he said it would be done immediately, would be the job description for MPs. And in all honesty, 2 months after that, we had a draft, so commendations. But for 2 years after that, the process
stalled.
Exactly, stalled. And what did JAMP do as representative of citizens that are concerned about accountability is that we simply did what we're doing now. We came to speak to the media, you amplified our voice, and we reminded the Prime Minister that an election was coming, and since we're hiring staff, technically speaking, we needed to have those job descriptions so that we could be properly informed about the people knocking on our gate and what they were going to be asked to do. And what did the government do? They reinstituted the committee in order to have the job descriptions passed in time for the election. So what I'm actually saying is we do have a parliament, Jodi, that will listen if citizens persist. And persisted we did, and persist we have to do now.
Persisting then is what Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal's Executive Director Jeanette Calder is doing on behalf of the people. We'll continue this discussion and connect the dots. What does this accountability that was promised mean in real terms for real people? We'll talk about that next here inside Lead Story.
Buy your Miracle Fire Rub for all arthritis, pain, swelling, poor circulation, numbness, inflammation, cold and flu, stroke, stiffness, sprains, strain, boils, insects, bites, and menstrual discomforts. Miracle Fire Rub, available at King Street Pharmacy, 72.5 King Street, downtown Kingston, Case Pharmacy, Duhaney Park Plaza, Kingston and Fontana Pharmacies nationwide, and March Pharmacy, downtown Kingston. Miracle Fire Rub. Rub it on, the pain is gone, gone, gone.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winford Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVMTV.
So much more than entertainment.
Every dream conquered is another dream gained. I land and I fly again like a jet plane. Headed straight in your direction, 'cause I'm wiser, one step closer. I'm winning 'cause I work so hard, and the music keeps on playing, and the people them I say we are my show tonight. Oh, what a feeling! Don't stop dreaming. Keep on believing in the power of the feeling. Whatever you want, take a chance. Song in your heart, step in your dance. You got a spark, don't put it down. Shine your lights on.
Executive Director of the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, Jeanette Calder, is inside studios with us here inside Lead Story, and she's talking to us about some of the calls that she is reminding parliamentarians and Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness that he had made in the past, reminding them that these are promises made to the Jamaican people, and therefore JAMP is asking for them just to do what it is that they had said they were going to do. Jeanette Calder, we are watching now an explosive new report from the Auditor General about the University Hospital of the West Indies and issues that have been highlighted there. Let me just take you quickly through some of what the hospital had, the Auditor General had indicated in that report, saying that between 2019 and 2020 and 2024 and 2025, the government of Jamaica allocated $671 billion to public health, with allocations rising steadily from $76 billion to $153 billion annually. Now, against this backdrop, they said strong procurement systems were essential to ensure value for money. But they said when they went in, they did not see good value for money. They saw the absence of approved strategic and procurement plans. They saw annual reports, never submitted them. Audited financial statements, not submitted by the University Hospital of the West Indies. And $65 billion in government subventions over several years, not accounted for. When you look at a report like this, help me out here. In plain terms, what then is the connection that you see between what we're seeing right now, the consequences of weak accountability systems, and what you're talking about right now, which is the promise, but not the fulfillment?
Right, so the promises that the Prime Minister made were directly related to his cabinet and the parliamentarians in the House, right? Accountability measures that we treat with their performance. So your question, Jodi, as to whether or not there's a direct connection between what is happening at UA and what the Prime Minister was offering, can we see one? And the answer is yes. Let me see if I can explain it to you this way. The budget, which is in essence what this is about, value for money and the taxpayers' contribution, the decisions are made ultimately by our parliamentarians. They make that decision. The laws that UE has broken and violated have been passed and approved and made by who? Our parliamentarians. The institutions that have been put in place to provide oversight have also been created by our parliamentarians. So the performance of the parliamentarians is crucial. Now you will notice, Jodi, that financial statements and financial reports, when the Auditor General receives them and checks them and is satisfied that it is mistake-free, where do they go? Back to our parliamentarians, to the Parliament. The reports from AMOCA and FID, an Integrity Commission and an Auditor General, when they have investigated any concerns, where do those reports go? To the Parliament of Jamaica. So do you see it coming back full circle? They decide where the money is going. They decide the laws as to how we will get value for money, what are the guardrails we have to put in place. They are the ones that create the institutions, and then they are the ones that get the reports. Therefore, it means that throughout the entire process, who are we depending on? Our parliamentarians. So therefore, if the Prime Minister is saying that he's going to put measures in place that will actually improve attendance
to Parliament
and performance
in Parliament,
can you see therefore then, if our MPs were showing up and if they were reviewing these reports, because this didn't happen yesterday, as you can see we're talking about 6 years, then it means that chances are we would have caught these even earlier. Take for instance the matter of financial reports and financial statements that have not been coming in. Those are supposed to go before our parliamentarians, who in not receiving it supposed to raise the red flag. So yes, everything I think that Mr. Holness has promised, I think, would have made a difference for performance in the House, and therefore I believe we could have caught, not stopped, not necessarily preventing Jodi, but I think we could have cauterized it earlier if our parliamentarians were in on this.
One of the most serious findings in that report from the Auditor General was a misuse of the University Hospital of the West Indies tax-exempt status to facilitate imports of private companies, resulting in revenue losses of approximately $23.1 million. They also spent $69.2 million on after-the-fact procurement, where goods and services were procured only after delivery or completion, in clear violation of procurement rules. We're looking at a Jamaica here that is talking about healthcare, that is talking about healthcare delivery, talking about the money that we need for healthcare delivery. When you see something like that, as Executive Director of Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, what is it that bothers you about how persons perhaps are not seeing as clearly the connection between the waste here and the services they cannot get elsewhere?
I mean, I think everybody listening right now can tell you heartbreaking stories that they have heard or experienced about visits to UWI and some other healthcare facilities. One of the most recent ones I heard is someone needed medication that the hospital just didn't happen to have. And they were able to identify that it was all the way down in at a particular pharmacy in Halfway Tree. And by the way, Jodi, by the time they got there and were on the way back, their husband passed. So I'm saying we have all of these horror stories, and if this is about access to resources, and value for money and extracting the most that we can out of our tax dollars. If the Auditor General has highlighted a lot of revenue losses here, for example, with the abuse of the tax
exempt status.
Well, it is telling us that what? More beds could be bought, more medication could be bought, more assets that we need, more surgical drills, dialysis machines. Let's not forget, 15 dialysis machines were purchased, and the Auditor General could not be shown where 11 of them were. Those are serious things. So whereas I'm always talking about our assets and talking about safeguarding our money, when it comes down to issues of healthcare, you have to admit, Jodi, that it is not melodrama to say that we're not only paying in terms of money here, but there are chances that people have paid with the cost of their lives for the decisions that were made over the last 6 years here.
As we close, help us out. Civil society, groups like yours, come and raise concerns. The public will say something.
Yes.
And then the news moves on. And we keep dealing with things every time they pop up, but then we move on. How can civil society and the public maintain pressure once those headlines have moved on?
And I know we don't have a lot of time, and I came prepared to give you several suggestions, but I'll zero in on one. When an Auditor General's report is tabled, based on the Constitution, it goes straight to a very special committee in the House called the Public Accounts Committee, and the name gives it away. So they're going to call in the technocrats, all these people we have heard, and some of the details that are not present, like who are these private companies that benefited? This is an opportunity to get those details. Here is a suggestion. Just as how you're tuning in tonight, guys, tune into the Public Accounts Committee. Listen to what is happening, but even better than that, whatever questions they have, having listened to you and I tonight, write the clerk of the House of Parliament and ask her to put this question that you have as a citizen before the Public Accounts Committee. I've done that, and they have honored it by reading your concern out and addressing it. So, Jodi, they don't just have to be what I call passive observers of this conversation. They can actually become what? Active participants in correcting it. And when they get the answers that they want at that Public Accounts Committee, Jeanette would love to come back and tell them how to use the access to information legislation to follow up to see if the permanent secretary are following through on those recommendations.
It is therefore important that Jeanette has made it very clear that she's willing to come back
and talk more about citizen participation,
information, request procedure, but also what we can do
more citizens
as the headlines move on, but these issues still remain. This is something that we want to thank Jeanette Calder, Executive Director of the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, for joining us inside the show and talking to us about. Now, what links tonight's stories is not geography, but power. When foreign governments tighten rules, small states absorb the shock. And when domestic oversight fails, citizens pay the price through weaker services, eroded trust, and even with their lives. Frameworks, audits, and promises mean little without enforcement and accountability. Delayed for too long, they become accountability denied to the country and to you. 2026 will test whether this country is prepared to move from diagnosis to consequences. I'm Jodi-Ann, and on behalf of the entire CVM production team, thank you for watching Lead Story. Have a fantastic evening, and I hope you stay safe.